Thank you for staying with us. This is Good Morning Kenya, and we have officially gotten into our Women at the Forefront segment. And as I had promised you earlier, I have with me the co-founder and executive director of African Future Lab. Her name is Lilian Omubieye, PhD, and she's here to just talk to us about the change that they are making as African Future Lab. So the topic of conversation is champions for change, and we're just going to be looking at women activists driving social progress. How about we just get right into the conversation? Welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get to talk a bit about the African Future Lab so that we get a better understanding of what it is all about. So tell me, what do you do as African Future Lab?
African Futures Lab is an organization that I co-founded and I'm still directing 5 years ago with the mission to hold states and private actors accountable for historical and contemporary racial injustices, using research and advocacy and working across Europe and Africa. And AFALAB, as we call it, is one of the co-organizers of this Wakati Wetu Festival. Yes.
Sorry about that. So you are the initiators of the Wakati Wetu Festival. How about we get to understand what the festival is about?
Yeah, so Wakati Wetu Festival is the first Pan-African festival on reparations in Africa. We are co-organizing it, so there are 4 organizations, African Futures Lab, Reform Initiative, Baraza Media Lab, and Deep South Solidarity Fund, organization based on the continent, but also organizations from the diaspora. And the goal, the objective is to democratize the conversation on reparations for colonial injustices and neo-colonialism. Because this conversation on reparations has been happening in NGO spaces, academic circles. And our goal is to bring that conversation to say that it has to concern also ordinary citizens. And one way to do that is to use arts and culture, to use music, to use paintings, to use videos, to use comedy. So there are different ways to sound the alarm and to say this is not a conversation that concerns only the diaspora or that is concerned only the past. It's a conversation that needs to happen now because many of the crises that we are going through, whether it's the debt crisis, many African countries are facing this debt crisis, the climate crisis, we saw it with the COVID. Many of them are current manifestation of these inequalities between the global north and the global south, which are the legacy of the colonial system. And we are saying that we have to have this conversation now, and we have to have it with ordinary citizens. So this is, I would say, one of the key goals of this festival, and to say, how about like creating spaces of resistance, creating space to imagine the future where we strategize about this future. So that's why we also have multiple roundtables with activists talking about gender issues, talking about climate, talking about tax justice, and also many documentaries, amazing documentaries. We have some amazing concert artists like Rick Wainana, June Gashui. So we have different people also coming from different parts of the world, more than 20 countries, more than 50 organizations represented. So this is, in a nutshell, the festival, but I invite you and also to the listeners to come and join us.
All right, we'll talk about...
we sold out, so it's mostly like, yeah.
We can watch online, I believe. All right, so we'll get deeper into just getting to know, you know, when the festival is happening and where exactly it will be happening. But before that, you mentioned matters to do with colonial injustices. Do you feel like even now we as Africans are still grappling with, you know, colonial injustices to date, and how is that affecting us directly, especially in the context of us being women?
Yeah, this is a very good question, because many people tend to think that it's an issue of the past, that we had independence, and now we are the only responsible of what is happening on the continent. And our organization and many of the co-organizers of this festival, we're saying this is not the case. If we look, for instance, at the climate crisis, scientific reports show that the roots of the climate crisis are in the process of extraction of resources that have benefited global North countries and that have harmed African ecosystems, African spaces. So the flows that we are, fruits that we are encountering, the droughts, everything is tied to this like colonial past. Same thing with the economic structures, the economic difficulties that African states are facing. We have seen like 22 countries, African countries, are in debt distress. So states are not able to put public resources for education, for the health systems, because they have to reimburse these debts. And this is not delinked to the colonial system. We have, many countries have inherited from debts of the former colonial administration. And on the top of that, they have, we are not treated equally in the way we have to respond to the debt situation, in the sense that some of the countries are paying like 12 times the interest rate of compared to European countries like Germany. In the same way, some of the institutions are dealing with that, like the IMF or the World Bank. We are not represented in these institutions. So African countries, for instance, have 6%. The 54 African countries have 6% of the vote in the IMF, whereas Germany alone has 6%. So it's not something that concerns the past. It's something that is very much present and that affect our economies, our political situation, because if a country is in debt distress, it means that there are some resources that it cannot put into education, into health, and into any other public services, and we know the consequences that it have in a society, and we have seen it also in Kenya with the protests. So our biggest mistake is to think that it's something that is past. And what we're trying to say, like, we hold our governments accountable, but we can't, they are not the ones that they should be only held accountable. There are these global North countries and international institutions who are still having a big role in our contemporary crisis. And in terms of how it affects women, I would say many of the studies have shown that when governments are not able to put the resources in education or in the health system, who is going to take care of that role? Most of the time it's women. So the burden of as a state, the burden is on women, and that is going to impact in gender inequalities, in the sense that they are not able to take time for their empowerment. So we shift the burden from states to the women. That's one thing. The second thing, it's in terms of if we look at the climate crisis, land issues are or the land problem concern mostly like women, because they are also the ones that work the most in the agricultural sector. So if the climate crisis affects the state of land, then women are more affected. So I think this is not something that that is completely disconnected from our present situation as women.
Yeah. All right. And in line with that, maybe what does being a woman activist mean to you, specifically in the African context today?
Yeah, thank you for this. Thank you for this question. I would say it's not necessarily an easy battle, because I think we have somehow a double burden, double pain, because we have to challenge patriarchy, but also the colonial capital system that we live in. So what we know in history is that patriarchy and the colonial system have been working hand in hand. We know that colonialism has affected women in a very specific way, in the sense that we have been depoliticized. The role that we used to have in former colonial, before the colonial systems was different. And the colonial system has dismantled like the roles that we used to have. So we lost somehow our political power. In that sense, our role is to highlight how there's a particular link between the colonial systems and the patriarchal system. So showing that, highlighting that in the past, and to also show how our grandmothers have fought that, and to build upon their fight. And it means that also looking at the contemporary challenges that are going to affect women in today's in contemporary societies, whether it's in Africa, but also in the global diaspora. And we know that in multiple sectors, they still have to tackle this double challenge, tackling the patriarchy, tackling the colonial system. So this is, I would say, it's a double burden, but I think we are on the shoulders of giants. So I think we have the faith that things are going to change. Things
will change eventually. Are there particular policies or maybe legal reforms that you believe could accelerate the progress?
I think the first thing that is important to do is to recognize recognize the harm that has been done, in the sense that the women have been affected. African women have been affected in a particular way. I would like to take a specific example. Many colonial administrations have abducted children from African mothers. There's one case that we are working on, which is the case of mixed race children that have been abducted by the Belgian colonial administration in DRC, Rwanda, my country, and Burundi. So the policy was to take children who were between 2 and 3, to place them in the religious institutions, and then to separate from their them from the mothers, because they were considered as a threat to the colonial order. So this is a practice that has been done in these 3 countries, but also in multiple countries in Africa. It's at the heart of the colonial order in the way they understand racial purity. And some of these children are still alive. Some of the mothers are still alive. And we have been working with organizations in DRC, Burundi, but also in Belgium, because they have been asking for justice and reparations for the last 70 years. And there's a recent case in which some of them have managed to condemn the colonial, the Belgian states for crimes against humanity. So for the first time in history, there is a European state that has been condemned for crimes against humanity. And this is, I would say, a big step, a big victory, and the way we would like to go beyond that is to say, now that you have recognized that it's a crimes against humanity, let's talk about reparations, because these people are not necessarily, I mean, the lives have been completely destroyed. So it's to go beyond the recognition, but to do justice and to pay reparations, but also to look at the countries, like what happened there. What can we do for these mothers? Because they have been, I mean, as a mother, I can say that if someone takes a child who is 2 or 3, my life will be completely destroyed. So how can we make sure that we go beyond just simple recognition, and we do pay also, there is form of reparations. And reparations for us is not just financial compensation. It's, in this case, for instance, they have been asking for access to psychological help, access to legal support, it's access to citizenships. So all these kind of different forms that reparations can take.
Yeah, and maybe just how better or how well can institutions just come on board to support and even collaborate, you know, in the midst of, you know, people like you as African Futures Lab, you know, with the work that you're doing. How can they come on board and support and collaborate?
We welcome the collaboration, because we, first of all, we think that it's fundamental to build solidarity. This is not a fight that only one organization or 5 organizations are going to deploy. We are talking about harms that have been happening for the last 6 centuries, and in many cases are still happening. This is the first thing. Solidarity and global solidarity between Africa and the global diaspora is key. The second thing is to say, and that's also something that we're doing in this festival, is let's start having a conversation on this issue, because in many African public debates, the issue of colonial injustices and neo-colonial injustices is somehow on the margins. So we have to try to see how these legacies are still impacting the present, having that conversation. And if you take the recent example of the protest in Madagascar, people have been protesting like for weeks to challenge the leader. And then suddenly friends come and exfiltrate that leader. So imagine like you protest for weeks, and then you don't have the possibility to hold your leader accountable. So what does it mean for a state for population to have that situation? So I think we have to start to have this conversation, taking them seriously, not just as a historical background, something that doesn't have anything to do with the present, but still like, okay, let's talk about like let's talk about this, and how does it affect the media space? How does it affect the economy space? How does it affect the tax justice space? And then trying to better understand the spectrum of responsibilities in the current crisis that we can have.
All right, allow me to cut you short on that. Let's have a break, and then we'll come back to continue with this conversation. Don't go too far. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Now, Lillian, gender injustice is something that most African countries are still grappling with, you know, and I would just want to hear from you, just how far do you feel we are to getting to a point where we attain, you know, gender equality in Africa?
This is a good question, in the sense that I think there are one important step that is necessary to make into this conversation. I think so far we have been somehow been working with Eurocentric frameworks of what it means to have like gender equality. And this Eurocentric policy of frameworks have erased the colonial and racial dimension and specificity of gender injustices on the African continent. And what we are doing, and as African Futures Lab, but also in the context of this festival with the multiple partners, is to say we have to reframe the conversation. We have to take into consideration the ways in which, as I was saying, women, African women, have been affected by this colonial system, and the way they are still being affected. And one case that one example, concrete example that I also can give is having these pharmaceutical companies that are going to come in Africa to make experiments on African women who in some cases are still pregnant. There was a recent case on that because they don't do these experiments in Europe. So they will come and do experiments on African women bodies as they used to do in the past. This is only, it's not, if we look at the ways in which we are challenging gender injustices, this is not the cases that, for instance, we're going to tackle. So it stays like, oh, it's a scandal, and then we move on. But in our fight for gender justice, we're not going to, to hold these companies, multinational companies, accountable for the harm that they are doing to African women. Same thing for like the bleaching products. Companies that are selling these products, and we know that these products are going to provoke a lot of cancers. So I think we are not there yet, in the sense that we are still working a lot with these Eurocentric frameworks that don't take into consideration the specific ways African women and also other women in the global diaspora are affected by they have this specific type of violence that targets them.
All right. Now, as we almost come to a close of this conversation, maybe if you can speak about how tech, and social media, to be specific, is changing the landscape, specifically when it comes to matters women-led activism in Africa. What role is social media playing in it?
So there are two things in your question. I think the first thing is to say, yes, social media has played a key role in terms of connecting movements, connecting activists, and giving space to voices that have been silent. Having access with the possibility to express opinions that were not that didn't have access to the media, to traditional media. So in that way, it was like a game changer in terms of giving power, empowering movements to connect themselves, but also to make space for voices that have been marginalized. But I think we have to be nuanced in the sense that social media and the tech industry is also a space where women and African women in particular are harmed. We know that the algorithms that are going to make certain discourse on social media appear or not are most of the time have biases, and this is one of the conversations that we have in this festival, like the role of reparations and AI. They have racial biases in the sense that most of the time we're going to have stereotypes of Black women, African women, when we are in this space of like when we ask, responses are asked to these algorithms. So the way they are portrayed, the way they are physically represented. So it's not like one response where I say, oh, it's something that is necessarily good, but I think it's also a space that contains a certain form of violence against the women, and we have to be aware that of these these constraints, or more than constraints, I would say it's also a space that needs to be decolonized, the tech world, I would say.
I love that. I love that. Now that this specific segment is usually for the younger woman to just try and inspire and show the younger woman that all is possible, and there are women who are actually in these spaces in different fields, and they are doing it, you know. So maybe just what role in all of this, what we've been talking about, what is the role of the younger woman in all of this, and is there space for them in there, and how do they take up these spaces?
It's the role, I think it's key, because it's we are rebuilding the future, and I think if we have to rebuild this future of a repaired Africa, of a repaired future for Africans of people of African descent, their role is going to be fundamental in the sense that they are the ones who are going to challenge the narratives that the policies or in the education system that they receive. Let's say when Europeans or international organizations came and say, like, we're going to help Africans and African women, as the international development sector has been saying. I think the role of this of the young generation is to say, no, you're not helping us. Actually, we are helping you. We are helping you building like us. So you are something. So I think this they have this. They should have this role of taking ownership of challenging the discourse, the international development discourse, the discourse on Africa and on Africans, and hold them accountable. Because I think we have been for many years silent, or have been accepting the status quo of, like, there's a superiority of Europe and Western world, and we want to go there, and we Africans have somehow we accepted that narrative. We're inferior to them. But I think we have to challenge them and say, like, we hold you accountable, but also in terms of what we read or what we receive as a form of education, and also the artists that we listen, the music that we listen, the language that we speak. So giving space to this African knowledge, African cultures, and challenging these global inequalities.
All right. Let's finalize by the festival. That is the Wakati Wetu Festival. You've already mentioned to us what is expected, of the festival. Just finalize by mentioning when it will be happening and where exactly it's happening.
So the festival is happening, is starting today. It will end tomorrow evening at Ntim Sidai. In Karen. We are sold out, but I'm sure that if you have the possibility to follow us through social media and share and you want to exchange about what is happening, you're more than welcome. But unfortunately, we're sold out. But we hope this is the first one of a series of other editions in the future.
All right. Thank you so very much, Lillian, for joining us for this conversation. And thank you also for the work that you're doing in the African space.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.